What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at 8 NBA player props. Over on PrizePicks tonight, we'll be talking points, rebounds, and three-point attempts. Didn't really see any assists that really stood out to me, and truthfully, I didn't see a whole lot of value up on the PrizePicks board, period, today. So, don't feel obligated to take all of the picks from this video or any of them if you don't feel good about them. But we're going to do the research together in real time. My preliminary research, though, kind of struggled here to find 8 quality picks that I was really liking today. Anyway, yesterday's video, we ended up going 3 out of 8. I think we had some blowouts that we were dealing with, a couple of injuries that impacted us. Plus, there was a couple of guys, I guess you could say, that just barely missed their player props. I think Giannis came up 1 assist short. Who was the other one? Michael Bridges in his rebound prop. I think he came up 1 rebound short. So there was a lot of really close calls, unfortunately. But you know what? This game that we play, it has its peaks, it has its valleys. So we have to ride the train here and look maybe to bounce back in today's video. So let's hopefully try and do that. We got 3 NBA games to talk about tonight, some pretty good ones. So let's go ahead and get into it now. We've got the New York Knicks at the Atlanta Hawks. We've got 211 implied total points here with the Atlanta Hawks as 4.5-point favorites at home. Now, this one looks like a low-scoring type of game, but the spread is pretty reasonable here. It doesn't look like it's going to blow out according to Vegas lines makers. Next game we have is the Brooklyn Nets at the Boston Celtics. This one has a 227.5 implied point total here. So this is the highest scoring total of all 3 games tonight, but Boston is a 7.5-point underdog at home, meaning that this game has the highest spread or the widest spread across any of the 3 games on tonight's slate. So there is some blowout risk, some potential for a blowout in the works here. And finally, the late game, the Los Angeles Clippers are traveling to Dallas, taking on the Dallas Mavericks. This game has a 219.5 implied point total here with Dallas as 3-point underdogs at home. So not a terrible amount of points here and not a terrible spread either. This one's not going to be super low scoring, but it's also not going to be a blowout. So kind of an interesting game there. That should be a good one as the Clippers look to finally dig in and maybe gain some ground here in this series. But so far, it's been all Dallas. All right, with those out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this. We've got 4 point props, 2 rebound props, and 2 3-point props that I was liking over on PrizePicks. By the way, if you don't play on PrizePicks, now's a great time to go ahead and join up. If you see the banner down at the bottom of this video, you get a $100 deposit match on your first deposit over on PrizePicks by using promo code Curry. So if you put in up to $100, they're going to match it. You'll have $100 to play with. They'll match it and give you $200. So you'll have a total of $200 to carry you throughout the rest of the NBA playoffs. If you just want to put in 50, well, they'll match that 50 and give you 50 on top of it, giving you $100 to play with. Again, you just have to use promo code Curry. I'll leave a link down in the description of this video where you can go and sign up. It's the only DFS site for single-player daily fantasy sports that I know of where you can miss 1 pick and still profit. So definitely check out PrizePicks today if you have not yet. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start talking about some of these points props. First one I want to look into is James Harden. He looked kind of interesting as a potential overplay here. He takes on the Boston Celtics. Game tips off at 8:40 p.m. on the East Coast over on PrizePicks. So let's take a look at number fire. We've got the points column already pulled up here. We're going to type in Harden's name here. And you can see they've got him projected at 22.7 points, putting him as a slight favorite to go over 22.5, leaning closer to 23 or more points in this situation. So with that in mind, we're going to head over to NBA.com, type in James Harden's name. By the way, guys, all the sites that I use in these videos, completely free. You can go out and do all this research yourself if you'd like. For the season, you can see he's scoring 24.6 points per game, which puts him a couple points higher than that 22.5-point prop tonight. Now, we do have to keep in mind that obviously Kevin Durant had missed some time. Kyrie Irving was away from the team at certain periods throughout the season. So this little boost here for James Harden of 24.6 points may not be completely accurate, especially since, as you recall, he started off the season with the Houston Rockets. So let's go ahead and move on down here, and we'll take a look at how well he has scored throughout the playoffs. You can see that he's appeared in 2 games so far in this playoff series, 31.7 minutes, so almost 32 minutes per game. He is averaging 20.5 points per game during that time span, which is a little bit less than 22 and a half, but 1 or 2 shots go his way, he's going to hit the over on this 22 and a half point prop. So let's go ahead and dig in and see how he's performed against Boston over the course of the season here. We're going to click traditional splits. We're going to change the filters from all teams to just the Boston Celtics, and we're going to click run it and see what happens here. Let's remove this playoff filter. Oh boy, it's spinning. It's spinning. Is it going to give us any results? Let's try and refresh the page here. All right. Well, I guess we're not going to get anything. All right, let's move on to RotoWire. Maybe the next player, it'll actually work for us. Let's type in James Harden's name. You got to love those technical difficulties, those glitches as we go through these videos. At 22.5 points across the industry today, he's a minus 115 to go over, a minus 116 to go over, and finally a minus 125 to go over. The best odds out of all 3 of the sites to go over this 22.5 point prop. So yeah, it's a little concerning that his averages so far in this series are just 20 points per game, which, is obviously less than 22.5. But again, 1 or 2 shots or free throws break his way, then I could see him going over his prop in this one. The only thing that's kind of a knock against him is the fact that the spread is kind of dangerous at 7.5 points. This game could turn into a blowout, but the total, 227.5, is pretty friendly. And I've noticed that James Harden, out of the 3 stars for the Brooklyn Nets, seems to be the one that kind of closes out games, whether they're close or not, for the Brooklyn Nets. So there you have it. Everything seems to kind of line up for a James Harden over based on tonight's matchup. But again, a little bit of cause for concern with the way he's been playing in the series so far. All right, the next guy I want to talk about is Dorian Finney-Smith of the Dallas Mavericks. They're taking on the Los Angeles Clippers tonight. Game tips off at 9:40 p.m. over on the East Coast on PrizePicks. So they've got DFS at 10.5 points. So let's go ahead and take a look and see where he's projected at on NumberFire. We type his name in here, and you can see that there's a pretty big difference here, 10.5 versus 9.8 points. So this would lead us to believe that even if we rounded this up to 10 points, we should be taking the under here, as that is less than his points prop over on PrizePicks at 10.5. So let's go over here to NBA.com. We'll type in Dorian Finney-Smith's name. Let's open up a new tab here. You can see for the season, he actually averages 9.8 points per game, which is less than 10.5, making the under still a viable option here. So let's click the stats link. You can see so far in this series, he plays pretty good minutes here, over 36 minutes per game. He's scoring exactly 10.5 points per game, which means he could go over or he could go under in this particular matchup here. But based on his season averages, it looks like more often than not, with that bigger sample size that we have, that he leans more towards 10 points or less than he does 11 points or more. So let's go ahead and click traditional splits here. We'll check and see if we can get some previous game logs here for Dorian Finney-Smith against this Los Angeles Clippers team. Did not work for James Harden. Maybe it'll work for DFS here. Hey, what do you know? So he's faced the Clippers 2 times this season. He played only 22 minutes in those previous meetings, averaging just 8 points. Now with his minutes on the uptick, the upswing, I expect his points to also trend in an upward direction. So we could take this sample size with a grain of salt, being that he did play such limited minutes in his previous 2 matchups from the regular season against this Clippers team. All right, last but not least, we're going to head back over to RotoWire. Type in Dorian's name, very unique name. There's only one Dorian Finney-Smith. And you can see that we've got him at 10.5 points across the industry today. First site has him as a minus 122 to go under 10.5 points. The next site has him as a minus 124 to go under 10.5 points. And last but not least, a strong position here at minus 128 to go under 10.5 points. So we've got 3 different sports sites that have him going under 10.5 points. We've got a season average that indicates that he can go under 10.5 points. His season or his average versus this team in this series so far is around 10.5 points. So, I mean, I think everything kind of lines up here for a good underplay on Dorian Finney-Smith. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with it. He's not one of the primary scoring options for this Mavericks team. He kind of gets, the occasional 3-point make. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. He's actually in my 3-point prop list. And, he gets kind of those garbage layups and stuff, but not a strong scorer. He leaves most of that up to Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, and Tim Hardaway Jr. So I'm going to stick with it and go with the under on Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, the next two guys are both Boston Celtics, and they're both points props, and they're kind of interesting because it seems like PrizePicks has these guys marked up by about a point, almost daring us to consider taking the under on both of these guys. So the first one I want to talk about is Kimball Walker, who's at 22.5 points. I've seen him at 21.5 points and a favorite to go over across various sports books today. So the question really becomes, yes, he's a favorite to go over 21.5 points, but is he a favorite to go over 22.5 points? Maybe there's a little bit of an advantage for us if we take the under. So let's head back over to NumberFire. We'll type in Kimball Walker's name. And you can see that he is projected for 21.3 points. Now, this is why it caught my eye, because obviously this points projection is less than where he is projected on PrizePicks today. Heck, he's even projected slightly under 21.5 points over on, which is where he's projected on those sports books I mentioned before. So far, the under is looking like the direction we need to be looking on Kimball Walker, but we're going to have to dig in a little deeper here, get a better idea of how well he's been scoring for the season, and more importantly, more recent games, because obviously Jaylen Brown's been out for the Boston Celtics for a period of time now. So for the season, he scores 19.3 points per game, which is a few points less than 22.5. Let's click the stats category here and change this from regular season to playoffs. And you can see that he's appeared in 2 games so far in this series, playing 28.7 minutes per game. Now he's scoring at just 16 points per game. A lot of that is because the Celtics have just been completely ran off the court here by the Brooklyn Nets in these games. But 16 points is not going to cut it. If we're looking to take the under on 22.5 points, you have to feel pretty encouraged based on how he's been playing in this series so far. So now what we'll do is we'll change this from playoffs to regular season, and then we'll click traditional splits, change this from all teams and move it to just the Brooklyn Nets. And we'll click run it and see what happens here. All right, so he faced the Nets in just one game this season. He played over 34 minutes in that matchup, and he dropped just 11 points. So it seems like he kind of struggles here against this Brooklyn Nets team, not only in this playoff series so far, but also in that one regular season matchup that we have to reference here at just 11 points per game in that one. So far the under is still looking like a good way to go here on 22.5 points. Now we're going to type in Kimball Walker's name here and take a look at how things are stacking up for him across the industry tonight. We've got him at 21.5 on 2 different books here. We've got him at 21.5, and he is a minus 118 to go under 21.5 here. And then we've got him at 21.5 over here, but he's a minus 128 to go over. So kind of interesting. You're seeing some mixed results here on whether the Kimball Walker will go over 21.5 or under 21.5. So it's fine if he goes over 21.5 and lands on 22 if we're looking to take the under on this 22.5. 22 or less points and we end up making money. So I think based on what I've seen so far, guys, I personally, now this is just me, you can do something else if you feel like it's going to go a different way tonight, but me personally, I think I'm liking the under on Kimball Walker at 22.5 points. I'll take this little bit of a risk, I guess you could say, by going under, since PrizePicks has him projected 1 point higher than other sports books. So the next one I wanted to talk about is Marcus Smart. He's another guy who seems to be projected just 1 point higher on PrizePicks versus the other books that we have across the industry here. So we're going to dig into Marcus Smart's projections and averages and see if that makes any sense as well. Like we went under on Kimball Walker, maybe we should go under on Marcus Smart as well. So he's projected for 14.2 points today, which puts him as a slight favorite to go under 14.5. So that we need him to score 14 or less points in this situation here. So he's leaning more closely to 14 than he is 15. So we're back to NBA.com. Let's type in Marcus Smart's name, and you can see his season averages for scoring 13.1 points per game. So just like Kimball Walker, we're going to need to do a little bit of a deeper dive here because Jaylen Brown's been out of the lineup, and obviously that's pretty impactful when you lose a star player on a team like the Boston Celtics. Now, in the 2 games in this playoff series so far, Marcus Smart's playing 35.7 minutes per game. Now, his scoring averages are up versus his season averages by about 5 points here. So he's scoring 18 points per game so far in this series. So you have to ask yourself, maybe this is a situation where the points for Marcus Smart regress a little bit. Maybe they go up for some of these other players like a Tristan Thompson, who's projected to go over. We're not going to talk about him today, but I saw him as a favorite to go over his 7.5 point prop. Maybe Jason Tatum takes on a bigger scoring role and he averages more points. Maybe Kimball Walker breaks out of his slump here. So we have to kind of like put the little pieces together of this puzzle or connect those dots. But anyway, let's go ahead and change this to just the regular season, and we'll click traditional splits, and we'll go in and we'll look and see how well he's performed against Brooklyn in the regular season. So we run that little report, and the results show that he has faced Brooklyn 3 times this season, playing just 27.7 minutes per game, averaging 17 points per game. So he tends to do pretty well against this Brooklyn Nets team in terms of scoring. His scoring across the regular season matchups and so far in this playoff series are higher. His points per game are higher than they are versus his season average versus all of the teams in the NBA. So that's kind of interesting insight here on Marcus Smart. It's kind of making me want to back away from this points prop and not go under on 14.5 points based on what I'm seeing so far. But we're going to type in Marcus Smart's name over on RotoWire, and the results show 13.5 points across the board. So at 13.5 over on DK, they got him as a minus 124 to go over. Then you see him as a minus 118 to go over. And last but not least, a pretty strong position at 13.5 points, a minus 133 to go over there. So this is probably one that I like less than the Kimball Walker one that we looked at. Even though PrizePicks has this guy marked up to 14.5 versus some of these other sites that have him at 13.5, this is one that I'm probably going to avoid. This is a fade for me. I don't think I want to gamble at taking the under on Marcus Smart at 14.5 points, seeing how well he's done against Brooklyn in his previous matchups. All right, so with that one out of the way, we can move on. We're going to skip assists because I really didn't see any assist props out there that I liked that weren't rounded up or rounded down. No real value for me on any of the assist props tonight. So, if you like playing those assist props and you like playing the ones that are rounded up or rounded down, well, good luck to you. Hopefully you don't land on one that is a push. I hate pushes. That's why I don't talk about them in this video. Anyway, we're going to move on to rebound props, and I've got 2 rebound props, and they happen to both be New York Knicks rebound props. So let's go take a look at them real quick. The first one that jumped out at me was Julius Randle at 10.5 boards because if I'm not mistaken, he's been struggling to hit 10.5, 11 rebounds, we'll say, in some of his recent games. We're going to dig into it together. Let's go ahead and head back to Number Fire real quick. We'll type in Julius Randle's name. Let's click the rebound column here, and you can see that he is at 9.3 rebounds tonight. So 9.3, obviously less than 10.5. This indicates that he's going to be closer to 9 rebounds than he is 11 rebounds. Of course, he'd have to hit 11 rebounds in order to break our hearts if we took the under on this 10.5 rebound prop. So let's dig in it a little bit further here on Julius Randle and see how well he's actually been pulling down boards, both for the season, in this series, and in previous matchups against this Atlanta Hawks team. Now for the season, 10.2 rebounds per game. Pretty good number there, but still slightly less than 10.5, and indicates that he is more often than not closer to 10 boards than he is 11 boards. So that's a good sign if we are looking to take the under here. Now, you can see in the 2 games in this series so far, 36.3 minutes per game. He's kind of just been struggling across the board here, but his rebounds are up to 12 rebounds per game, which is kind of surprising when you figure, all right, the Hawks have Clint Capella, they've got John Collins, pretty strong front court, right? But somehow Julius Randle continues to get it done. So that's a little bit of a knock against going under on Julius Randle. So let's change this from playoffs to regular season. Then we'll click this traditional splits link. We'll change this to just the Atlanta Hawks. We'll run this report and see how well he has rebounded against the Hawks this season. So he's faced him 3 times in the regular season, played over 41 minutes per game, and in those matchups, 12.3 rebounds per game for Julius Randle. So he does rebound the basketball pretty well against this Hawks front court, both in this series so far and in the regular season. He's pulling in about 12 rebounds per game against the Hawks. So it's making it a little bit more tricky to go under on Julius Randle in this 10.5 rebound prop. So let's move it back to RotoWire. We'll click the rebound category, and then we'll type in Julius Randle's name. Now we got him at 10.5 boards across the industry today. This first book has him as a -113 under and a -113 over, meaning that it's even. So we're not really getting any type of information from that one that's helpful to us. Now this next one, he is a -114 to go under 10.5 rebounds. And last but not least, this one was a really telltale sign, a -143, which is pretty good odds to go under 10.5 boards. So you have to ask yourself, do you believe that Julius Randle is in line for 12 or more rebounds like he's kind of been putting up against the Atlanta Hawks all season long and all playoff long? Or is this a situation where he regresses a little bit, kind of returns back to closer to his season averages of about 10.2 rebounds per game? That is for you to decide. It looks like a lot of people who are putting their money down on these different sports books do believe that this is a game where he goes for 10 or less rebounds. The projections also seem to indicate 10 or less rebounds is the way to go for Julius Randle tonight. So I think I'm going to ride with Vegas and ride with the projections and ride with his season averages and hope that he pulls down just 10 boards or less in this particular game here. All right, the next one I wanted to talk about, I mentioned, was another New York Knick, and we're talking Alec Burks, who at 4.5 rebounds has actually been doing pretty well at covering those 4.5 boards, getting 5 or more boards in a lot of his recent contests. So let's take a look at Alec Burks real quick. He's not a guy that we typically target for rebound props, but hey, if there's value to be had, then I will gladly take it. So over on Number Fire, they got him at 4.8 rebounds today, which puts him closer to 5 boards than it does 4. Puts him over 4.5 where he is projected today over on PrizePicks. So far, the over is looking like the direction we're headed for Alec Burks in this rebound prop. Let's go ahead and type his name into NBA.com. Open up a new tab here, and you can get an idea how well he's been rebounding the basketball for his season averages. 4.6 rebounds per game. That puts him over 4.5. So the over is definitely still in play here. Haven't seen anything to knock us off of that. And you can see that in the 2 games in which he's played against this Atlanta Hawks team in this series, almost 28 minutes per game, and his rebound numbers are at 5.5 boards, which definitely covers and clears this 4.5 rebound prop. So we're going to switch this from playoffs to regular season, click traditional splits, change the filters to just the Hawks, click run it, and see how well he's rebounded against the Hawks this season. So he played in just 1 game against the Hawks this season, played just 19 minutes in that game, so the sample size is kind of skewed here, but he still pulled in 4 rebounds, which is pretty close to 4.5 and 5 rebounds. So in just 19 minutes of game time against this Hawks team in that one previous matchup, he did pull in 4 boards. Pretty impressive if you ask me. I expect him to play more than 19.5 minutes tonight for sure. So finally, we're back to RotoWire. We're going to type in Alec's name, and you could see that he is at 4.5 boards across the industry today, and we're seeing some pretty strong odds for the over on this 4.5 rebound prop. -129, looking good. Even better here, -132, and better yet still, a -139 for the over. So everything that I'm seeing here, guys, I like this Alec Burks rebound prop. Probably like it a little bit more than the Julius Randle prop, although I do think that the Randle prop still has a little bit of value, a little bit of merit to it. So I'm going to take this Alec Burks over on the 4.5 boards and hope that he continues to pull them in like he has been. So it's looking pretty good. Now, last but not least, we've got 2 3-point props that I want to discuss. The first one that I wanted to talk about is Kyrie Irving, who's facing his former team in the Boston Celtics. Boston hasn't been very good at guarding opposing guards for the most part this season. This could be a game where Kyrie Irving pops off. I do expect them to, feed into that narrative of him returning back to Boston, playing in front of the former Boston Celtics fans that he used to play for when he was a member of the team. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, we're going to go to NBA.com. We're going to look at Kyrie Irving real quick, see how well he's been shooting it from beyond the arc in the season versus this team in the series so far, and versus this team in the regular season. So you could see that let's change this from playoffs to regular season. Hold your horses here. Hold your horses. All right, 54 games this season. He has attempted 7 3-pointers per game, makes 2.8 on average, good for 40.2%. So 2.8, obviously close to 3 3-point makes per game. Definitely puts him over 2.5, so that's a good start if we are looking to take the over on this 3-point prop. Now let's change this to playoffs. Those 2 games against the Boston Celtics so far, he's attempted just 5.5 3-pointers in those 2 games, and he's made just 1.5, good for just 27%. So that is quite a big dip versus where he's shot the ball in the regular season here. So things have to kind of improve here for Kyrie Irving. I expect his averages, his percentages to go up. This could be a situation where it starts to turn upward for him. Now let's go to advanced filters. Let's change this to the Boston Celtics and run a report. All right, so he's faced Boston 3 times this season, played over 34 minutes per game. You can see, guys, 30.7 points per game versus this Celtics team. Now, in those regular season matchups, he attempted 8 3-pointers per game on average, and he made 4 of them, good for a 50% 3-point field goal percentage. So we got season averages of field goal percentages from the beyond the arc that are much higher than where he's been shooting in this series. Plus his previous matchups against this Boston Celtics team, he's just been shooting lights out. I have to believe that at some point he will start shooting the ball better than 27% from 3-point land. I'm not saying tonight's the night he does it, but I'm kind of hoping that it is in front of this Boston Celtics team. All right, let's move over to RotoWire. We'll type in Kyrie's name. And we've got him at 2.5 3-point makes across the industry. Now, 2 of these books have him even, minus 113 over under, minus 115 over under. Now, this one here in the middle, minus 122 for the over, suggesting that, maybe there's a chance that he makes at least 3 triples in this game. So I'm going to kind of ride with the Kyrie returns to Boston narrative here. I'm also going to ride with the fact that his season averages from beyond the arc are much better, and his previous matchups against Boston are much better than he's been shooting it in this series so far. I do think that there's a game where he's going to snap out of this shooting slump and get back on track. And I'm hoping tonight it's this game. So the last guy I want to talk about is Dorian Finney-Smith. We're back to the guy with 3 names. He's at 1.5 3-point makes, and he has kind of like low-key been hitting this 1.5 3-point prop. Kind of like Michael Bridges for us last night, where he hit 2 3-pointers pretty early on in the game and crushed his 3-point prop. Kind of liking Dorian Finney-Smith to go over 1.5 3-point makes. But let's go ahead and do what we just did for Kyrie Irving and see how well Mr. Finney-Smith has been shooting it from beyond the arc. So we'll click the stats here. Let's change this from playoffs to regular season. Now, he appeared in 60 regular season games. He attempted 5 3-pointers per game, making 2 of them. So he's good for 2 out of 5 on the season, good for 39.4%. Pretty good 3-point field goal percentage there. So that 2 3-point makes is exactly where we want him to be tonight if we do feel like taking the over on this 1.5 3-point prop. So let's change the season type from regular season to playoffs. And you can see that so far in these 2 games, he's playing over 36 minutes. We talked about that before. His attempts are down to 4.5, but his makes are up to 2.5. And his 3-point field goal percentage likewise is up to 55.6%. So he's been making a pretty good amount of three balls in this series and for the regular season. So, I mean, nothing so far is persuading me to take the under or fade this pick. I still think the over is a good look here. Let's change this back to regular season. Let's go ahead and click traditional splits, change it from advanced filters to the Los Angeles Clippers here and see how well he shot against them throughout the regular season. Now, he's faced the Clippers 2 times in the regular season, playing over 22 minutes per game. Obviously, those minutes are a lot lower than where he's been playing in this postseason so far. So you can expect these numbers to be a little bit lower than typical, but still, in just 22 minutes of play time, 4.5 three-pointers attempted, making 2 3-pointers per game, good for 44.4%. So he doesn't take a whole lot of them, but the ones that he does take, he typically makes a high percentage. So I'm still liking the over based on everything that I'm seeing so far on Dorian Finney-Smith. Now let's go ahead and type in his name and we'll look at his 3-point props across the industry today. Got him at 1.5 across the board here. We got a minus 115 for the over, slight over there, good start. Minus 132, very good odds to go over based on what we're seeing on FanDuel. And then last but not least, a minus 125 to go over 1.5 3-point makes. So that's 3 sports books that all agree that the over on 1.5 3-point makes is a good look on Dorian Finney-Smith. Plus we've got averages for the season, averages for the series, averages against the Clippers in the regular season that all indicate he could be making more than 1.5 3-pointers tonight. 2 or more in this case, and that will get us paid. So I'm going to stick with it. I actually probably like this Dorian Finney-Smith 3-point prop, maybe even a little bit more than I liked his points prop. Now it's kind of weird because his points prop suggested he would go under, but his 3-point prop suggests that he'll go over. So maybe he'll make like 1 or 2 maybe he'll make like 2 or 3 threes, which puts him at like 6 to 9 points and still puts him under his point prop. I don't know. But anyway, I'm liking this prop quite a bit, so I'm going to stick with the over. You guys let me know what you think, though. Let's try and, improve on these 3 hits that we had from yesterday's video. Obviously, if you guys tune in every day, you know that 3 is kind of a below average or subpar day. We're going to go for 4 or 5 like we typically do or better. We had 7 2 nights ago. I don't know if we could repeat that tonight. It's looking a little kind of, murky on tonight's NBA slate, but hopefully we land on some good picks. Good luck tonight. My name's CJ. Thank you so much for subscribing. With those notifications turned on, we'll catch you in the next video, guys. Peace out.